Ooh, shit. Oh, shit. Guys, look, we back. Okay. The reason I'm laughing and giddy, I guess, is the best word I can describe it as, is because we're back with another video, guys. We're back with another video, another AOT reaction. I mean, let's just get into it, guys. I'm gonna be realistic. I just ended a 6-part, technically 7-part series reacting to this particular individual in terms of their video and their take on, Eren and just the whole Attack on Titan story. They're back, y'all. They're back with another video. In this particular video is entitled "The Rumbling is Indefensible." So I guess, and I'm just guessing here, guys, before we even jump into it. I'm guessing that what he's saying is that, genocide is bad and that the rumbling is just a terrible thing to do and you can't really defend the rumbling. And to a degree, I definitely agree with this sentiment. I definitely agree that genocide is bad. I'm not saying that genocide is a good thing. I'm not saying that. But what a lot of people are saying is they're referencing the sense of how the story was written. And how the story was written, it was written to a degree and to a point that was the only other option in terms of what Eren had to do. You know what I'm saying? Like, it was one of those, like I said, it was one of those, bad apple spoils the bunch. Yeah, there's innocent people in there and kids and innocent people who were just living their lives that he's, wiped out. But it's also one of those things, like, he cannot pinpoint every individual that was good and bad and make a choice and a judgment, of who is this. It's one of those things to where it's like, dude, I just got to kill everybody. Everybody who's across the sea that wants us dead, I got to wipe them out. Because the reality is, they want us dead. Kill or be killed, right? So that's where the story kind of went in that direction. So, this particular video that I guess he's about to do is he's going to talk about it. And he's going to basically say that the rumbling is indefensible. We're going to dive into it. We're going to see what's going on. We're going to see what points he makes. Again, I'm quite sure that the quality of the production is going to be fantastically well done. Hats off to Invaders for doing that because the production is very well done. Very well given to us to where we see. So hats off with that. But we're gonna see what the takes are, man. I'm not gonna hold y'all any longer. We're gonna go straight into it. But shout out to one of my subscribers here, Talladega. Shout out to you. I'm gonna go ahead and try to do this in one take because they kind of gave me some criticism, which I say, hey, give to me, guys. Some things that I can make it better. They want me to basically try and do a video as little as parts as possible so that the main theme of understanding can be coherent. And I agree with that. That's why, I'm very long-winded. I like to be very detailed about what I say. I just don't like providing like an 18-hour video. You know what I'm saying? That's just me. But for you, Talladega, and for others who agree, I'm going to go ahead and try to do this all in one take, so there's not going to be multiple parts to this. I'm just going to react to this. I'm going to say what I need to say and make it as powerful and poignant as possible with as little words as possible as I can to go ahead and get through this and give my take on everything. If something crazy happens or he says something wild and out of pocket, I'm addressing it then and there. And then I'll give my final thoughts at the end as usual, as you all know how the videos play out. And we'll try to rock it that way. We're going to try a new format for that. So that's what we're going to do. And just enjoy. Again, guys, remember to like, comment, subscribe, and most importantly, share the video, guys. I know there's more of us out there. I know there's people who side in terms of agreeing with what we say. Guys, please feel free to share this amongst those people so they can get a different understanding. And we could just constantly keep growing and evolving and and just keep having this conversation because I love to have this conversation. But other than that, I've said enough. I've ranted enough. I talked enough. Let's get into this fucking video. This is a video done by Invaders entitled The Rumbling is Indefensible. Let's get to it. Let's see what you got to say, man. Whew. Shit.
The rumbling was an evil, pointless act of violence. It was nothing more than...
I'm sorry. It wasn't pointless. It wasn't pointless. Let's just get that out the way. It really wasn't pointless. Was it an evil act? For sure. Yes, agreed. But pointless? No, it wasn't pointless.
mass murder, and its supporters knew as much. Contrary to popular belief, destroying the world beyond the walls was never needed to save Paradis Island nor its people. The deeper you dive into the story of Attack on Titan, the more evident it becomes that the rumbling was not only unnecessary, but also deliberately orchestrated. Its fault lies almost solely with several key individuals
Go ahead.
who prioritized their own self-interests over what was right. But diving deep into the events of the story is easier said than done. The final few arcs present an overwhelming amount of information non-chronologically, and often hide crucial details to save for later reveals. To say this portion of the story is dense would be an understatement. Nearly every piece of exposition is vital. However, upon unraveling each one of these complex plot threads, we're presented with a new story. One of how the people of Paradis Island were manipulated into choosing the path of violence, how both they and Marley were tricked into fighting a pointless war, and finally, what led to the Titans being unleashed in an entirely preventable tragedy. My goal with this video is to uncover the true story behind what led to the rumbling, and in the process, permanently put an end to the claims that it was ever necessary to begin with. The events that would lead to the rumbling began in the year 850, on the day that the scouts reached Eren Yeager's basement, the same day that Marley's warrior unit was defeated at the Battle of Shiganshina. To understand everything that happened in the last third of the story, it's first necessary to understand what the situation was like following this battle, both inside and outside of the walls. The complicated circumstances of both nations at this point in time would allow them to be easily manipulated. Before we get started, I want to make something clear. In order to understand why everything happened, we first have to understand exactly what happened. For the sake of establishing context, it's necessary to recap some of the events of the story. However, I'll be keeping it as brief as possible. While my past analysis videos have focused on the themes of the story above everything else, this one will be different. While I will be analyzing several characters, that won't be the focus of this video. Instead of a thematic analysis, it would be better to think of this video as an in-depth exploration of the plot and why it moved forward in the way that it did. Keep in mind, however, that I'll still be including my opinions and interpretations, and I am not claiming that this video is entirely objective. Regardless, I hope that this video is as informative to you as it was to me while I was in the process of writing it. Following the Battle of Shiganshina, the warriors' defeat had inadvertently exposed Marley's weakness to the world. Marley's esteemed warriors had been defeated by the Devils of Paradis, and had 2 of their titans stolen in the process. Taking advantage of that, Marley's enemies had declared war, forcing the nation to put their Paradis Island campaign on hold. But while Marley became entrenched in wars on multiple fronts, Paradis began to face a new crisis of its own. As Paradis' people learned the truth of the world, the island would undergo a radical transformation. Until the scouts reached the basement, the people of the walls had believed that they were the last survivors of the human race, fighting to prevent their extinction. But that had been a complete fabrication. They learned that they were Eldians, and that the world beyond the walls was full of people who despised their very existence. As the people of Paradis learned the concept of countries, and what it meant to have their own, the very nature of what they were fighting for would change. While they'd previously fought to save all of humanity, now they would fight only to save their own nation of Eldia. The people of the island reacted to this flood of overwhelming information in different ways. Some accepted it, while others refused to believe it. But most importantly, others still were enraged by it, and they wanted revenge for what had been done to their people.
Yeah. So I agree with that, because it's just like it's just like in this world. There are some people that's going to side with certain things that are, it's one of those things to where it's just like. It's just like, again, it's just like with anything that's even in reality. There are people that are going to side with things, and there's people that are going to side with things and think that something has to be changed, and there's also going to be folks who's going to go to that extreme, like, practice extremism, and try to become this revolution and create these groups and stuff like that, like much like he's got depicted here on the screen. So yeah, I agree so far with that.
And as time passed, their hatred for the outside world would only continue to grow. But as Parody continued to transform over the following months, and as Marley remained entangled in a series of brutal wars, Zeke Yeager began to formulate a plan of his own. His strategy for simultaneously saving the island and, in secret, carrying out his life's mission, to sterilize the Eldian race. Although Marley could not yet spare the military power needed to launch another invasion of Parody, they wouldn't sit idly by. Their compromise was to begin sending small fleets of survey ships to the island to keep an eye on its activity. But, one after another, these ships each disappeared without a trace. Little did Marley know that also aboard these ships were the anti-Marleyan volunteers, a group loyal to Zeke, formed by him to oppose the country from within. Led by Zeke's second-in-command Yelena, they defected, taking over the ships and surrendering to the scouts. It was here that Yelena would tell them of their mission's goal, to inform them of Zeke's plan that would save the island and, should they accept his proposal, assist them in carrying it out. Zeke and Yelena had two goals. Their secret goal was to sterilize the Eldian race, in what Zeke called the euthanasia plan, but their stated goal was to protect Parody. While Zeke's main reason for getting involved with Parody Island was so he could carry out his euthanasia plan, he was also true to his word that he wanted to prevent their destruction. With that in mind, let's put the euthanasia plan aside for now and focus solely on understanding Zeke's plan for protecting the island. Having an in-depth understanding of the ins and outs of this plan and the influence it had over the characters is absolutely crucial to understanding the events of the story. It's so important, actually, that I won't be skipping any details. I'll be keeping my explanations as brief as possible, so be sure to pay close attention. In exchange for being allowed to stay on Parody for the remainder of his time alive, and to be allowed to make physical contact with the Founding Titan, Zeke offered the following. As part of the terms of their alliance, the island would be provided with Hizuru's advanced technology and weapons. Second, he would support their military by providing them with information he had on Marley. Lastly, but most importantly, he made the outrageous claim that he would guarantee their island's safety using a secret plan that required both the Founding Titan and a Titan of royal blood.
Alright, let's read this. Let's see what Zeke's proposal is. Y'all ain't going to be able to see the part that's covered up, but I'll go ahead and read it. He states that this is Zeke's proposal when he got over there to Marley, when he got over there to Paradise and stuff and everything was going down. Say he would mediate an alliance between the nation of Eldia on Paradise and the Eldian friendly foreign nation of Hizuru. Yeah, with the Azumabuto plan. Gotcha. He would support their military by providing them with the information he had on Marley. He would guarantee their island safety using a secret plan that required both the Founding Titan and the Titan of Royal Blood. He's talking about the euthanasia plan. That's all you had to say, was just euthanasia plan. Okay. I agree with those. Yeah, I agree. Okay, let's continue.
However, he would only explain the details of this secret plan should they accept his initial proposal. Because Zeke had hidden his goal of euthanasia, the plan he described appeared to be completely altruistic in nature. The military found that suspicious, and asked the question, why would the Beast Titan, the one who'd annihilated the scouts for Marley, now want to selflessly help them? What was in it for him that was so great that he'd betray his motherland to obtain it? But what was even more absurd was that he was offering them a plan that would supposedly guarantee their island's safety, yet gave no further details. His claim sounded too good to be true. Distrusting Zeke, and fearing what his true motivation could be, they moved to reject his proposal. But this changed when Eren himself spoke up upon hearing Zeke's claim. After he had learned that the Titan that ate his mother was a Titan of royal blood, Eren had realized how to bypass the vow-renouncing war that had sealed away the Founding Titan's powers. This could be done by having a non-royal blooded Founding Titan make physical contact with the Titan of royal blood. The conditions that Zeke now specified were the exact same conditions that Eren had replicated years ago when he, as the holder of the Founding Titan, had come in contact with a royal Titan.
Dina.
Until now, Eren had hidden what he knew to protect Historia. As she was the only surviving royal on the island, Eren feared that the military would force her to become a living weapon if he told them what he knew. But with Zeke's cooperation and with his royal blood, Eren realized, Historia wouldn't need to be sacrificed to meet those conditions once again. Parody could control the countless titans sleeping within the walls without needing to sacrifice a single person. They would have a truly unstoppable power, the rumbling, and could use it to crush the outside world to dust. Although they were taken aback by Eren's suggestion, the information he revealed supported Zeke's claim. And with that, Zeke's proposal was deemed as reliable enough for the military to consider, and they began taking small steps towards its implementation. Even if they didn't trust Zeke, the power that they could potentially wield was far too great to ignore. With the help of the volunteers, they began construction on Parody's new port. Once it was complete, they would need to meet with Hizuru to hear the rest of Zeke's plan. As his 13-year term would expire in just 4 more years, they would have to work against the clock if they wanted his help. But while the volunteers appeared to be selflessly aiding them on the surface, those most loyal to Zeke worked towards his secret goal of euthanasia. Zeke would need control over Parody's military when the time finally came to carry out his true mission. And so, as they appeared to work with the military on friendly terms, Elena and her subordinates began to poison its leadership with the spinal fluid-tainted wine. Despite the military remaining cautious towards Zeke's proposal, the plan continued to move ahead. Following the completion of the port, the nation...
I mean, all you're really doing is reading you're just reading the manga to us. Like, we know all of this. We know most of it. Most of any and everybody knows how this kind of rolled through. You know, I'm definitely gonna continue, but we kind of already know. Like, okay, this is what happened. This is the reasons why. I mean, we get that. You know what I'm saying? So we can continue.
Of Hizuru's ambassador would finally arrive. She brought with her the full details of Zeke's plan to save the island, just as he'd instructed her to. This plan, which we'll be referring to as the 50-year plan, was as follows. Zeke would be brought to Parody to make contact with Eren. This would allow them to bypass the vow-renouncing war, giving them full access to the Founder's powers. The two brothers would unleash a handful of the Titans inside of the walls. They would not cause any destruction, but rather would be used as a threat. By showing the power of this test rumbling, the world would become aware that Parody was capable of unleashing all of the Titans. Using this threat, the military would negotiate for a surrender from Marley and their other enemies. They would create a deterrent or a disincentive against future attacks by declaring their stance. If they were attacked again, they would trample the entire world in retaliation. In exchange for access to Parody's natural resources and for their military alliance, Hizuru would bring modern weapons and technology to the island. They would modernize the military so that they could one day compete with other nations without relying on the threat of the rumbling. The time this would take was estimated to be 50 years, giving the plan its name. In the meantime, both the founding Titan and a Titan of royal blood would continue to be passed down so that the threat of the rumbling could be used as a deterrent indefinitely.
That will acquire basically a story of basically becoming the whole cycle of cannibalism will continue. You know, with the whole cycle of eat, the person, do all that, eat, you know what I mean? That whole little bullshit that was going on and down below with the royal family, with the Reese family.
If there weren't any Titan injections left on the island, Zeke would provide them upon his arrival for this very purpose. Additionally, once Zeke's 13-year term had expired, it would fall on Historia, as the last surviving royal, to inherit his Titan. Lastly, Historia would need to have as many children as possible so that the royal bloodline could never again be wiped out. She would have her first child after inheriting Zeke's Beast Titan, and at the end of her term, this child would inherit the Beast Titan from her. The most important thing to understand about the 50-year plan is that it would rely on Parody's threat to unleash the rumbling as a deterrent to prevent attacks. Rather than the brutal offensive plan that Eren had in mind, this was a defensive plan, designed to put Parody in an authoritative position while also minimizing the casualties they'd cause. As you know, the 50-year plan never came to...
See what he's talking about? Here we go. He's just pushing that stupid shit again. Y'all, he's pushing that garbage again. It wasn't no brutal plan. If it was avoidable, he would have avoided it. He wasn't willing to sacrifice Historia and make her a baby factory, and the cycle of cannibalism keep continuously going. That's what he wasn't willing to do. So that scratches that idea. All right, next. What's the next idea? You say now in the beginning of this video, he claimed that there was no reason for the rumbling to even happen. This is what he claimed. He said there was no reason for the rumbling to be happen, and it was easily avoidable. So I just gave you the reason why they didn't want to do the 50-year plan. Biggest reason, Eren didn't want to sacrifice the story and create a baby factor, and the cycle of cannibalism continue. Next, what's your next plan? What's the next plan? Because the 50-year plan relies on that. For them to survive for 50 years, it relies on Historia basically becoming a baby factory and having as many children as possible, as you just said, in order for the 50-year plan to work. Alright? That's what you said. And this is what's always given to the source material. So I commend you, excuse me, for sticking with the source material. Because it did say that. That is the reason, that is the sole catalyst of the 50-year plan, is for her to continue to have babies. Eren didn't want to do that. Next. Move on.
Fruition. We'll talk about why later, but for now, let's talk about the viability of it if it had been successfully implemented. Was Zeke's claim that the plan would deter their enemies' attacks just wishful thinking, or would it have worked and protected Parity forever? The answer is that yes, this plan certainly would have succeeded in its goal. Before we begin, I'd like to make it clear that the 50-year plan wasn't a perfect solution, nor even a good one. It would have led to a cold war between Parity and the nations of the outside world, and the peace it created, based entirely on fear, would have been fragile at best. It was an ethical nightmare that would require perpetuating the cycle of royal inheritance, and it would reignite hatred for Eldians all around the globe. However, despite those glaring flaws, the 50-year plan was still preferable to the rumbling that Eren would unleash. Its problems did not hold a candle in comparison, and it would have saved the island. So long as it existed, there was absolutely no excuse to support the indiscriminate mass murder carried out in the rumbling.
All right, so that's your thing. So what you're saying is, all right, so here's what he's pushing. That just based off of that, you're pushing the simple fact that just because that plan existed, that plan was a better plan than wiping out the entire world. I agree. I agree with you. I 100% agree that that was a better plan than just saying, fuck it, I'm going to kill everybody. However, that plan in a sense was more so sacrifice the few to save the many, right? So he was going to sacrifice Historia and sacrifice Historia's kids and their children's kids and all that stuff. You're going to keep sacrificing them over a 50-year time period just so that you all could be on par with the rest of the world, right? That was what it was. Instead of just wiping out billions of people, it's one of those things to where it's like, all right, cool. What we going to do instead is just sacrifice our people. Maybe you would have thought, I somewhat agree in the sense of the scale of it. Yes, the scale of death and the scale of life lost is a lot better on the 50-year plan. Absolutely. Absolutely. Who wouldn't? Who wouldn't agree with that? But it still was not a viable plan in the sense of they were still having to sacrifice more. Plus, they're sacrificing a royal family and consistently with this entire cycle, like you explained. Was it a bad option? Yes, it was a bad option. But was it worse than killing 80% of the planet? No, it wasn't worse than that. So I agree to that degree, but you need to tell us, your point can't be, well, hey, just because this plan existed, that means that the rumbling should have never happened. No. Because it was still, he wanted a different way. I can't say that. You know what I'm saying? You can't, I don't know what you're talking about. Like that's what I'm saying. Like you can't really be like, hey, just because this plan is here, this plan should have never even happened because you have this plan. I didn't want to do this plan. This is worse, yes, but this is more of a guarantee. Well, it was still a stupid fucking plan of what he did. He should have just destroyed everybody. But you know what I mean. You that's not really an argument. You know what I mean? Like that's not really an argument, in my opinion. It's not really an argument because I'm trying to think of how else would it be comparable to. It would be like, you know what I'm saying? Me being like, okay, I got 2 sandwiches here, right? I got 2 sandwiches. One sandwich is here, right? It's not. It doesn't have all. It's not as good as, you know what I mean, or it's good. It's pretty good, but it doesn't taste as good as this one, right? So that's like me being like, all right, well, since I have these 2 sandwiches here, I shouldn't eat the one that's not as good, because I should not eat the one that's not as good just because I have a good sandwich here. Like, no, I could either, when it comes to the sandwich, I could still eat both. You know, that's not really an argument. You see what I'm saying? The argument doesn't make sense. Just because you have 2 options, you're saying that, oh, because I have 2 options, and since one of the options was slightly better than the other option, then the other option shouldn't even have been picked. Not really, because the flaws in itself were going against the very foundation of what he was working towards. He was working towards freedom, and he didn't want to continue that entire cycle. So to him, that was a worse plan than just going on and just killing everybody. I didn't want to do it, but I also don't want. I'm tired of sacrificing our people. I'm tired of our people being the brunt of the joke, if you will. You know what I'm saying? That's kind of more than likely what Eren was feeling. I'm kind of tired of our people being the brunt of the joke. So since our people are always the brunt of the joke, it's time for us to do something about it. We need to find another way. I'm not willing to sacrifice Historia and Historia's kids and their kids and their kids and their other kids constantly over a 50-year period just for us to maintain some semblance of life. Like, no, no, we're not doing that. What else you got? You know what I'm saying?
But I'm getting ahead of myself. We'll save discussing the rumbling for later. For now, let's explore the finer details of the 50-year plan and why it would have worked.
It would have worked. It would have worked. We're not saying it wouldn't have worked.
To review, the only requirements needed to use the thread of the rumbling were as follows. The founding titan must continue to be passed down to non-royals. And second, another titan must continue to be passed down the royal family. Naturally, these requirements also meant that children with royal blood would need to continue to be born, and that the military must maintain a supply of titan injections. But nothing else was required to carry out the 50-year plan. Modernizing the military so that it wouldn't need to rely on the power of the Titans would be beneficial in the long run, but not doing so within the expected 50 years wouldn't cause the plan to fail. Parity wouldn't lose access to the Rumbling's power until the day that they decided it was no longer needed. With that in mind, let's determine what specifically could have led to the 50-year plan's rumbling threat becoming unavailable. In other words, what would cause one of the above 2 conditions to become impossible to meet? This could only occur if the holder of the founding titan were to defect or be killed, or if every member of the royal family...
We don't give a fuck. I mean, who gives a fuck about hypotheticals? We don't give a fuck. You need to explain to us about... You're talking about what could end the 50-year plan. A lot of shit could end the 50-year plan. Like you said, every member could be killed. You know what I'm saying? They could run out of injections. A bunch of shit. You know what I'm saying? We don't know. Shit, Marley could attack early. It's a lot of others. There's a lot of variables involved that could end the 50-year plan and before it even happens. You know what I'm saying? That's not the point. The point that you need to explain in your video, it ain't got shit to do with this. We don't give a fuck. These are hypotheticals. These are like, okay, well, no, we want you to explain, because, again, from where I'm sitting at, you guys can tell me from where I'm sitting, all it seems like your argument is the rumbling is super bad and the 50-year plan is sort of bad. So you should have picked the sort of bad thing over the super bad thing because that option was at least there. That's your argument. That's what it sounds like you're arguing to me. You're arguing that one plan was worse than the other plan, and since that other plan wasn't so bad, that should have been a valid choice. You should have picked that plan over killing everybody else. That's your argument. But he didn't. And the reason he didn't is because he didn't want Historia to be a baby factory. He didn't want the cycle to continue. Next, what else you got? It's just that simple. Like, why are we trying to make something so overly complicated here? It's literally just that simple. Yeah, the plan sucked. I'm going to wipe out 80% of society. Yeah, that's fucking terrible. Nobody's not saying that it was terrible. But what we're saying is based off of the story it was written to. That was the only way that it could have done. Because the way the story was written, Eren didn't want to do the Historia thing. So since he didn't want to do that, what else you got? There was no other options. There was no other options but kill or be killed. Because I turned that one down. What else you got?
Were to simultaneously defect or be killed. Either of these occurring would cause Parity to lose access to one of the two key components they needed to protect themselves. For that reason, their biggest concern would be to safeguard both the founder and the royal family. The biggest threat to that goal would be assassinations, which had posed a threat to the previous royal family as well. As a precaution against this, the Fritz family had attempted to conceal their identities, but because of their association with the government, assassins had been able to find them. But with the royal family's now tenuous connection with government proceedings, and with the founder out of the royal family's hands, both of them could be hidden anywhere, inside or outside of the walls. The founder's ability had no range, and the rumbling could be controlled from anywhere in the world. While assassinations would still remain a threat to them, they would be incredibly difficult for any attackers to pull off. Yet external factors were not the only threat to the future of Parity. Internal conflict would pose just as much of a concern. Carrying out the plan would require cooperation from both the founder and the royal family. If the holder of the founder were to act on their own or betray the military, there wouldn't be any way to force them to cooperate. The government's only recourse would be to attempt to steal the founder back from them, an almost impossible task. Previously, it was mentioned that the royal family's cooperation was needed, but that's not strictly true. Unlike the founder, the royal family's cooperation, while ideal, was not essential. The royal-blooded titan required to bypass the vow-renouncing war could be any titan, including a pure one. While it would be truly terrible, in a worst-case scenario, an uncooperative royal could be transformed into a pure titan. It wouldn't matter if they were willing. Once the founder made contact with them, the royal would have no say in how the founder's powers would be used. There's one more concern worth discussing. If Parity were to run out of Titan injections, the plan would be in jeopardy. This was the main reason why they were forced to cooperate with Zeke to begin with, and why they couldn't use Historia as their royal Titan until after his arrival. They had no injections left, and they needed Zeke's help to acquire more. With the plan's failure conditions established, let's now talk about how it would work in practice. Would the threat of the rumbling truly be enough to scare the world into surrendering, and would it remain as an effective deterrent even as technology continued to advance?
Bubbles. Bubbles, bubbles, bubbles. There are bubbles everywhere.
We're already on part 4.
When Karl Fritz, the 145th king of Eldia, fled to Parity Island with many of his subjects, he left a message behind. If you ever interfere with us, the millions upon millions of titans in the walls will flatten the entire world. But the self-hating Fritz had no intention of ever following through on his threat of the rumbling. All he sought was a temporary peace. His vow-renouncing war would prevent the founding titan from being used so long as it remained in the hands of the royal family, deliberately leaving Parity defenseless. The Tiber family that controlled Marley knew of the vow, and that the island posed no threat because of it. For the next century, Marley would allow them to live in relative peace, while the rest of the world dared not to provoke them. But it was only a matter of time until the ever-expanding empire of Marley would seek the island's resources. Knowing that Fritz's self-destructive ideology had been passed down, Marley would fearlessly send its warriors to steal the founding titan and end the Eldian Empire once and for all. The warriors' mission would end in failure, but the information they brought back with them was critical. Before returning to Marley, they learned that a revolution had occurred within the walls, and that the founding titan had been stolen from the royal family. Even if the vow-renouncing war was no longer in place, it shouldn't have been a cause for alarm. After all, only the royal bloodline could use the Founder's powers to begin with. It would be useless in the hands of a non-royal, or so Marley thought. But once, just once, Eren Yeager had used the Founder's powers to control Titans. If the Eldians of Parity had figured out an alternative method of unlocking the Founder's true potential, Marley realized, Karl Fritz's threat of the rumbling would no longer be a bluff.
Yeah.
If they were able to control the Titans, though, why hadn't they already done so? Based on the fact that the rumbling had yet to begin, it was clear to Marley that Parity was incapable of carrying it out. And for that reason, Marley would not fear retaliation when they invaded Parity Island in the near future. But what if Parity's military had gone ahead with the 50-year plan and had used the threat of the rumbling as a deterrent? Had they made it clear that they could destroy the world, neither Marley nor any other country would have ever dared to attack them. Looking at the benefits and costs of such an attack should make the reason why evident. By attacking Parity, the outside world could benefit by neutralizing an enemy that had no intention of attacking, and
bro,
obtaining
what is this, bro? Like what the fuck is this? What are we doing here? Like, what the fuck is going on? Just talk. You're, bro. We don't need a history lesson, dog. We don't need a history lesson. Again, well done on the production, but we don't need a history lesson, bro. We know what happened. Attack on Titan fans know what happened. They knew what happened. We don't need to dive into benefits and cost scenarios and pie charts and graphs. We know what happened. You said in the beginning that you were going to prove that the rumbling was unnecessary and it was pointless. I don't agree that it was pointless, but was it overkill? Yeah, absolutely it was overkill. For sure. Everybody knows that. We know that it was overkill. You know what I'm saying? But again, the way the story was written, it was written to a point to where that was the only other option. Because again, I just gave you the reason why they didn't want to do the 50-year plan. Eren said, no, I don't want to do it. We're not going to do that. Fuck that. You know what I'm saying? We're not going to do that. What else you got? So it's like, you know what I mean? I don't know. It's like, to me, honestly, it kind of seems like they were trying to still kind of go with that plan, even behind Eren, because his story already had a baby. Supposedly, she had a baby with the farmer, so it looked like they were still going to try to be like, let's just try. Let's try and do it under the rug a bit. You know what I'm saying? That's what it kind of seemed like to me. You know, but I don't know. It's like they were maybe trying to find steps to do it. I don't know. You know, who knows? But we don't need a benefits cost ratio pie chart or bar graph or a pros and cons list. You said it was pointless. It wasn't pointless at all, because there were reasons, again, in the other videos I've done, multiple videos I've done, the reasons as to why he did what he did. Again, it wasn't pointless. Pointless would be like, damn, I just did this and there was no reason for me to do it. That's a pointless cause. That's pointless. You know what I'm saying? That's pointless. There are always reasons to do things. Come on, man.
The cost to attack Parity could be untold amounts of military spending and the destruction of the entire world. When laid out like this, it becomes evident. If they held the power of the rumbling, the potential cost of attacking Parity would have greatly outweighed the potential benefits. The outside world had little to gain from an invasion and everything to lose. The practice in which one party refrains from attacking another due to the potential costs outweighing the potential benefits is no...
Bro, here we go again with these fucking theories, dog. Deterrence theory. Deterrence theory refers to the scholarship and practice of how threats or limited force by one party can convince another party to refrain from initiating some other course. We know what a deterrent is, bro. What is this? Huh? What are we doing? What are we doing? Can we get back to Attack on Titan, dog? Like, can we get back get to the point at hand. This is ridiculous. This is ridiculous. This is ridiculous. Motherfucker, I know what a deterrent is. People know what a deterrent is. Right? It's to stop something from happening. I'm going to put a deterrent up. You know what I'm saying? That's either a shield or a minigun or something. First line of defense is to stop the attacking of the opposing force, so they won't take action. No shit. What are we doing? We know this. Get to the point. Get to the point. What's the point? We're going a roundabout way here of getting to the point. Do you even have a point? What are we doing?
Known as deterrence theory. This practice is often applied to real-world conflicts as well, and is one of the driving factors preventing nuclear wars from occurring in the modern age. But let's imagine a worst-case scenario for parody. Could the technology of the outside world advance to a point at which they would no longer fear the rumbling? No. In fact, no matter how much military technology developed, the world's fear of the rumbling would remain, and it would always serve to deter their attack. While the world would develop more efficient means of killing the Wall Titans as weaponry advanced, they wouldn't be the only ones to gain access to new technology. If their attack was far enough into the future, the world may find that they would have to battle against both the Colossal Titans and Parody's own military, which, with Hazura's cooperation, would lead the world in aircraft development. In the future, stopping the rumbling wouldn't be as simple as staging bombing runs. With all of that being said, it is undeniably true that with sufficiently advanced technology, the world's militaries might be able to stop the rumbling. It's possible that with a concentrated global effort, with enough planes in the air and with enough bombs being dropped, every last one of the Titans could be killed. But would such a massive, unnecessary gamble really be worth making? Could the world be certain that they had stockpiled enough ammunition? Could they be certain that nothing would go wrong during the operation, that Parody would sit idly by as their Titans were helplessly picked off from the sky, or that they wouldn't launch a preemptive strike at the first sign of aggression? Even if the answer to each of those questions was yes, the cost of such a war would be massive. In their best-case scenario, it would result in the most costly military operation in history, and in their worst-case scenario, it would result in the end of the world. Regardless of the weapons that the outside world...
We know that. He said millions and millions. Millions and millions. Right? That's what he said. Millions and millions. Millions and millions, dog. Of these Titans. Millions and millions. Millions and millions. They ain't stopping that. You know what I'm saying? Like, no. I don't think no matter how fucking big or how much fucking weapons they have, because they would have to more likely nuke that motherfucker and do all that stuff. You know? But hell, even when, Armin blew up, right? Armin did his little thing. They were referenced it as like a nuke or whatever. I think something to that degree. Minus the fallout. But the damage is there. The damn hallucinogenia fucking worm was still fucking alive. So, like, doesn't matter. They wouldn't have stopped it. Moving on.
Possessed, including nuclear weapons, a small risk would always remain that they would be unable to stop the rumbling. The potential cost of their attack would continue to outweigh the potential benefits, and their attack would always be deterred. It would be in the world's interest to instead work towards the peace that the people of Parody wanted. As the island's threat couldn't be neutralized by force, diplomacy, with terms favorable to Parody, would be the only way in which the threat they posed could ever be neutralized. The world would need to incentivize them to de-escalate by providing them with an alternative means of ensuring their own survival, and in time, their conflict may even end as a result.
Intermission.
As the 50-year plan was dependent on benevolence, it raises the question, was a show of selflessness enough to mend LD's relationship with the world? Interestingly, AOT has asked this question once before, in one of the most important chapters of the series, Friends. I've talked about this specific part of the story on numerous occasions, for good reason. Kenny Ackerman and Yuri Race's friendship, which was the focus of this chapter, can be thought of as the backbone of the entire narrative's themes. Kenny was a violent serial killer, but upon meeting with Yuri, his worldview changed. Kenny had tried to murder Yuri, but Yuri had easily stopped his attack. But rather than crushing Kenny, Yuri inexplicably spared his life, apologizing to him for the persecution he had faced. This miracle of compassion overcoming violence awakened within Kenny the desire to be similarly compassionate and led to the pair's lifelong friendship. To quote one user who pointed out this connection, "There is a certain similarity between Kenny and Yuri in the 50-year plan. Parity with the rumbling is so much more powerful than the rest of the world that they could easily crush all of them. And yet, their plan was to do none of that, but rather defend and coexist. One has to wonder if another miracle wouldn't have been possible."
They tried it. They tried that. They tried to coexist. When they went over there for the little UN type little summit that they invited them to when they first went over there. They tried to. And then motherfuckers said no. They were like, all the people that are here, in Marley, man, they cool, bro. They good, dog. You know what I'm saying? They good. But nah, bro. We'll kill them. And that was just Marley. To my knowledge. It was other groups there. Other groups. And the declaration of war with the other groups that were there in Marley. With, what's his name declared the war? Willie Tiber declared the war. Not Eren. Eren didn't start. Eren didn't attack them when Reiner was there until after Willie was like, yeah, let's kill him. And everybody was like, yay! What are we talking about? Bro, what in the fuck is going on, bro? Am I in a time warp here? What the hell is happening here? What are we talking about? All of these questions were already answered. What are they talking about?
With the 50-year plan's details now fully established, let's return to where we left off. Despite the plan's flaws, the majority of the military's leaders were in support of it, and believing it to be the best course of action for the island, Historia was cooperative as well, despite what it would mean for her own future. To those in charge, her freedom was seen as an unfortunate but necessary sacrifice to ensure their country's continued existence. But not everyone was in agreement that this plan was the right one.
And was like, nah, dog.
The scouts knew that as long as the rumbling continued to be used as an active threat, they would be seen as the devils of parity who controlled the world through fear.
Y'all already are.
To the scouts, who had dedicated their hearts for the freedom of all of humanity, that was unacceptable. They had finally made it past the walls, but if they followed this plan, they would remain just as separated from humanity as they always had been.
It doesn't really matter at that point because they still didn't care. It doesn't matter if you guys wanted to go over there and do that. They still were persecuting you guys. Hell, they were persecuting the Eldians on Marley by having them in internment zones. They already didn't like these motherfuckers. They already treated them like trash. So you thought by talking to them, even though there were already present Eldians that were presently getting persecuted, you thought by you guys coming over and being like, hey, we Eldians, bro. They just gonna be like, yeah, come on over. Hell no. They finna be like, fuck y'all. Get in that zone. Get in the zone. Y'all too. What? Bro, this is wild, dog. This video is wild, bro. This shit is wild. Wild. Oh, come on.
To avoid such a situation and what it would mean for their friend Historia, the scouts began to look for diplomatic alternatives. And without their cooperation, the plan's implementation was delayed. It was only a small hope that peace could be achieved without resorting to the threat of the rumbling, but the scouts continued to search for it all the same. Regardless of whether the scouts would be successful, the future looked promising for Parity. They had a nearly foolproof plan they could fall back on, and they would certainly survive long into the future if it was used. But the military had failed to account for one important factor that would derail the entire 50-year plan: They hadn't realized that one of their key players intended to oppose the plan from the very moment he had learned what it entailed. In fact, it was their most important player who would do everything he could to prevent the plan's implementation. This was, of course, Eren himself.
The man didn't want to sacrifice his friends, bro, for that. Like, what's wrong with that? Again, yes, we know that the other alternative choice was very violent and very crazy. We get it, yes. Wiping out 80 to 100% of society, wild. It's a very extreme. But I can also understand him not wanting to sacrifice Astoria. It ain't got nothing against to being like, man, Eren's just, man, he's fucking terrible. No, it's like, I don't want to sacrifice this motherfucker. I don't want to sacrifice Astoria. I don't want to continue this fucking cycle. Is it possible? Sure. Yes. And even like you said, even just as you said, even the other scouts were like, it's cool, but I mean, hell, I don't think that's cool because we're all still going to just be looked at as the devils. Which, shit, you should have accepted anyway. Again, you know what I'm saying? That's what I'm saying. You should have accepted that anyway. But I'm just saying, like, we act like just Eren just was like every time. If a plan was established that didn't involve any downside or very low risk downside on Paradise's side, I'm quite sure Eren would have went with it. He would have went with the plan. If it was the case. You acting like Eren was like, hey, man, anything they say, man, I ain't gonna do it. And they like, hey, man, we have to, we gonna go talk to them folks over there. Nope. I ain't talking to nobody. Y'all gonna have to make me. We gonna kill them all. Yeah, that's what you're acting like. Like he was just a stubborn motherfucker and wasn't trying to figure shit else out. You know what I'm saying? Who was just like, I mean, he went over there again, as I said, in my opinion. Y'all can tell me if I'm wrong or not. But I think he went over there too, again, to get an understanding and left to get an understanding of what it is. And that's how he was like, well, we're, everybody's the same. We're all human. We all have these different, different intricacies and different things like that. You know what I mean? I think he wanted to talk to, Reiner and reveal that to Reiner. But also as well, seeing if a possibility would change in terms of the Willie Tiber thing. Maybe he wouldn't declare war. Maybe he wouldn't do none of those different things, but he did. And it was only after he declared war that Eren said, all right, fuck it. It is what it is. There you go. He was like, fuck it. Oh, well. That's when he changed. Come on, man. Like, don't do this again, bro. Don't push this stupid shit again, dude.
When he had first learned that Zeke had a plan for saving Parody, Eren was fully prepared to cooperate with his brother. After hearing Zeke's initial proposal, Eren assumed that Zeke had the same thing in mind as him, to command the millions of sleeping wall titans to annihilate their enemies. It was when Eren heard the actual terms of Zeke's proposal and realized that what Zeke wanted was not to use the rumbling, that Eren made his choice to defy the plan. Eren had despised the 50-year plan from the moment he first heard its terms, and it was his rejection of it that sealed the world's fate. But why did Eren feel this way? The first reason why Eren hated the plan is that it would take away Historia's freedom.
Okay.
While the scouts also opposed the plan in part for the same reason, Eren, who valued freedom above all, took this opposition to the next level. His fear of this exact situation occurring is why he had hidden his knowledge of how to bypass the vow in the first place.
Yeah, it's true.
The second reason is that Eren ideologically opposed the cycle of inheritance as a whole. It was a system founded on taking away children's autonomy and robbing them of the choice of what to do with their lives.
I agree.
The third reason is that the nature of the plan contradicted what Eren believed to be the best course of action. This was the opposite of the offensive.
I don't agree with that. I don't think initially I don't initially think that he thought that the rumbling was the only and best course of action. You know what I mean? I don't think he had that. He may have, because there was no there was no other options that would not harm anybody. So that's why he just felt as though that may have been the best option to do. To be like, okay, well, we might have to wipe these motherfuckers out. because we don't know, because again at this point he wasn't over there. He didn't hear the declaration of war yet. He didn't go over there to listen to them at the little meeting to say, okay, destroy the island. He wasn't there for that yet. So
strike first plan that Eren had envisioned. Rather than crushing their enemies and wiping away the world's hatred, Parody would have to sit back, wait, and gamble on everything going smoothly. These were all completely reasonable concerns, and were good reasons to look for an alternative to the plan. If Eren's motivation had ended there, no one could have faulted him for his opposition. After all, the 50-year plan was undoubtedly cruel in its own right, and it came with plenty of risks.
What?
But there was one more factor driving Eren's opposition to the plan. It was completely irrational, yet it was what motivated his dissent more than anything else. The final reason why Eren opposed the plan is that he wanted to destroy the outside world. Ever since he had first learned the truth of the basement, and he had learned of the rumbling, he had wanted to flatten the outside world. This was the true reason for Eren's rejection of the 50-year plan, and why he would choose to unleash the rumbling. Not because he had no other choice, nor because he was forced into it. It was simply what he had wanted from the very beginning. Reason for Eren's rejection of the 50-year plan.
I can't with
not
this
because
guy.
He had no other.
The way to use the thousands of titans sleeping inside the wall to crush the entire world. Why does he keep showing this? Right? Why does he keep showing this as though this was what Eren said he wanted to do? This was when he was explaining the situation to them and explaining about it. This was what he was saying. This is the way to use the thousands of titans sleeping in the wall. This was a way to do it. As a matter of fact, let me find that real quick. Give me 1 second here. I don't need to find it. I'll find it afterwards. But this is, bro. Okay.
Their choice, nor because he was forced into it. It was simply what he had wanted from the very beginning.
Okay.
Even if the 50-year plan had been perfect, Eren still would have wanted the rumbling. The plan's flaws only gave him the justification he needed to reject it, to convince himself that the atrocity he was going to commit had been his only option.
This man said if the plan was perfect, he still would have just said, fuck it. I'm going to kill everybody anyway. like...
Even Eren himself wouldn't be able to keep up with that faulty reasoning, and he would admit he had done everything for himself. The reason why he wanted to destroy the world is too long to explain here, but can be understood by watching my previous video. However, for the sake of what I'm talking about in this video, the specific reasons why he wanted to do so don't particularly matter. What matters is just that he did, and that it was the true reason why he rejected the 50-year plan. Despite Eren's vocal opposition to the 50-year plan from the start, the military continued to prepare for its implementation, but they made a grave mistake in ignoring his dissent.
Oh my God.
Eren's refusal to follow the plan triggered one of its 2 failure conditions. As the holder of the founding titan, he would be the one who would determine how its powers were used. As Reiner had once put it, Eren was the worst person who could have inherited such a godlike power. He was a true monster, capable of inflicting untold suffering on innocents just to reach his goals.
That's not what he said. I don't believe Reiner said that. What he was saying when he said that he was the worst type of person to have that is because of the simple fact that he was very motivated. Like, he had this burning drive to kill all the Titans. So if he was to kill all the Titans, he's the worst person to go against because of his ideals. Not that he, nobody knew he was going to do that. Nobody knew that he was going to do the rumbling. He didn't fucking know. He just said he's the worst person to have it because of what it is. Like, he's very mentally powerful. He's very mentally capable. You know what I'm saying? We see that in videos and media and all the time. You know what I'm saying? Certain people have these certain powers. They're the worst type of people to have that power. Not because they make terrible decisions. It's just because of the simple fact, like, they can oppose what I'm trying to do. And they can oppose what I'm trying to do very well. Even if it was a good guy. You know what I'm saying? So come on.
As the writing was on the wall that the 50-year plan would soon go into effect, Eren sprang his own plan into action. He would play every side in the conflict to his advantage, before using the rumbling to destroy the world.
This man act like this was just this meticulously planned.
Before we talk
thing,
about the
dog.
actions that Eren took, it's important to take
Like,
a
he
step
just was
back
like,
and put the cruelty
I'm
of the
gonna kill
rumbling
these
into
fools.
perspective. While the 50-year plan was gravely flawed and would have resulted in the suffering of many, its failings were insignificant in comparison to the alternative. The rumbling was a complete and utter global genocide.
Agreed.
The casualties would extend far beyond enemy soldiers. Billions of
Agreed.
innocents, including Parady's allies, would be trampled alongside them.
Agreed.
The countless Eldians living outside of the walls, including victims of Marley like Faye Yeager, would be murdered indiscriminately.
Agreed.
Morality aside, becoming the only country on Earth wouldn't necessarily be beneficial to Eldia either. Having already undergone an industrial revolution, the outside world was significantly more technologically advanced than they were. The world's scientific innovation would be lost forever, and humanity's survivors would be set back over a century. Any goods that couldn't be produced on Parody would be wiped from existence. But most importantly,
Bro,
it would
we
permanently
get,
isolate.
dude, we get that we get that the plan was wild and it was extreme. I understand it. We get all that. But what you were saying was that it was pointless. And your argument is just because there was another option there, not as bad as this option, he should have picked that option. He didn't want to pick that option. And it had nothing to do with just because he wanted to kill everybody. It was because he wasn't willing to sacrifice Historia. He wasn't willing to continuously do that. Those went against his ideas. He wasn't willing to do that. If they would have came up with a perfect plan, he would not have just randomly just killed everybody. It just was like, I'm going to kill the entire world just because I want to. He wouldn't have done that. He would not have done that. He wouldn't have. 139 was just terribly written. That's just what it was. 139 was terribly fucking written and dumb. You know what I mean? Again, if they were going with the concept that Eren was slowly but surely going down the rabbit hole and turning crazy and had this power thing or something like that, that should have been more established and that should have been more streamlined into the story. And we would have understood that. He would have started, the real pushing away would have been real. He wouldn't have thought to, I'm going to make my friends the heroes. No, it was one of those things, talking about, man, that's dumb. Talking about, even if I didn't know you guys would stop me, I still want to do it anyway. That's terrible fucking writing. Again, he took homage and took liberties from Breaking Bad. When they asked Walt why he did this and stuff, he used to just constantly be talking about, I did it for family, I did it for family, I did it for family. And then they asked him and he was like, no, I did it for me. Because I was good at it. It was something I was good at. And I enjoyed it. But we saw the slowly changing Walter over the century, over the years he was doing it. We saw him ever so slowly devolving into that dude, evolving into the villain, where he was like, okay, where the motherfucker killed the girl that was sleeping in Jesse's thing, where he ran the person over. You know what I'm saying? These little acts of violence started to add up. I was like, okay, I can believe that he started to enjoy it a little bit. Because he started to get down there, even when his brother-in-law questioned him. And was like, even if I am the man that you say that I am, I would tread lightly. You could see those slowly, subtle hints of him going down the dark hole. We could see that. Eren, we didn't see that shit at all. Like, we didn't see him. We didn't see this motherfucker going down there. The only things you people point out is, oh man, he killed those folks, man. He was always talking about killing folks and wiping out folks. But he was only attacking people after they attacked him. He only wanted Annie and them dead and Reiner and them dead after they killed all the innocent people. He only wanted those people dead that killed Mikasa's parents and stuff because they killed Mikasa's parents. And who knows what would have happened if he would have not acted. He just didn't do things just because. Like, oh shit. No. There were always reasons and justifiable reasons in my opinion, as to why he acted on those things. Do I think that the rumbling itself was a little far? Absolutely. It was very extreme, as I said multiple times. But it was the only option in which he saw that did not have him sacrifice his friends. He kept his friends at a distance to where the only person that was to blame for it could have just been him. You know what I'm saying? That was what he felt like. I'm going to go ahead and shoulder the burden. I'm going to go ahead and take all this load on, and I'm going to make this decision to do this so you guys can do it. It was a stupid fucking plan to try to make them out to be the heroes, but hey, that's what he wanted to do. Come on.
Themselves, destroying all of humanity's acquired knowledge. The rumbling would have consequences that affected more than just humans. Nature would be devastated.
We know.
The entire world would be left as a flattened, corpse-ridden wasteland for years to come.
Bro, we know, bro.
The majority of land, animal, and plant species would be made extinct, trampled alongside civilization. This catastrophic environmental damage would affect humanity's remnants in unforeseen ways. For those reasons and more, but most significantly because of the fact that billions of people would be murdered, the rumbling was seen by nearly everyone as an act of evil that would have transformed the Eldians of Parity from victims into perpetrators. Not a single person, in the military or otherwise...
You see how he keeps showing this? Dog, I'm telling y'all, bro, imagery, bro. I'm telling y'all how videos are done and edited. He's showing this image to keep pushing this narrative that he just wanted to kill these folks. This was when he was explaining to them about what they're doing. That's why he said this is the way to use the thousands of titans sleeping inside the walls to crush the world to dust. That was the way. That was the way that it was. Where he was explaining that. As a matter of fact, let me look that up, man, because I'm tired. I'm kind of tired of him doing that. I'm kind of tired of it, to be honest with you. I'm just gonna be honest with you. Y'all give me a second, because I'm kind of sick of that. I'm kind of sick of these images being put in, and you talking about giving context, and you want to go all the way back. You want to go all the way back into, explaining and basically reading the manga to us to give context. Then give the correct context for this picture and stop just putting it up here every time you got something bad to say about Eren. Do that. How about doing that? Stop doing that. That's what I'm saying. That's not cool. If you're trying to deliver context through the story or trying to deliver context through your video, give the correct context. Stop putting, again, these images and things that Eren has done and not really explaining about the imagery and just putting it up there and just being like, oh, okay, yeah, there you go. Because anybody, again, seeing this and being you constantly talking about Eren just wanted to do what the fuck he wanted to do, people are going to be like, oh, I see this, I read this, to crush the world it does. Oh, yeah, he just want to do that. Come on, man. Stop doing that. We need to stop doing that. I'm going to see what this was. Because if I'm not mistaken, what chapter was this when he was explaining? So I can read it to you guys. Shit. Give me a second here. Let me find this chapter. Because I've had enough of that. Because that didn't came up on the screen by 8 motherfucking times. That didn't came up on the screen by 8 goddamn times. Let me see here. Friends, I know what you're thinking. I know this is abnormal. And this usually doesn't happen in all my other previous videos. But this is for good reason. Okay? So I can go ahead and give you a spoiler warning. Right? Throughout the rest of this video here, I'm basically not going to find the picture in which I was referencing, the chapter of the picture that he kept throwing out of context. I'm not going to find it. But I did find it, so I decided to put that portion in this video to prove my point so that everything can kind of be congruent, right? In a sense to where understanding, right? That you guys get where I'm coming from. Because my main gripe, honestly, about the whole thing was the fact that he kept taking images out of context and he consistently keeps trying to put them in there to push his point, to try to push his narrative. But that's not the case. Because if you notice That panel picture kept showing up every single time he tried to talk down upon Eren in terms of trying to present him as this killer, as this psychopath who just wanted to kill people, wanted to destroy the world, regardless of whatever plan they ever came up with, right? He wanted to always push this narrative because now he has to kind of push that narrative because of the fact of his previous video. He can't backtrack. He can't take a retraction, or so he can, but he's not going to, right? But this is just to prove my point of how context matters, because throughout the entirety of that video, he was going in, basically giving us an entire recap, trying to put into context his point regarding why the rumbling was pointless, right? That's what he was doing. So I am going to give you guys context of the panel he keeps constantly posting, saying, with the words, mind you, that this is the plan that Eren wanted. This was what he wanted to do. That's wrong. That panel is in chapter 106, Brave Volunteers. That panel and that picture was when he was explaining to everyone, which he already previously mentioned. This is when he was explaining to everyone the process of basically bypassing the renouncing of war vow that was placed on the founding Titan. He was explaining to them that he had got in contact with Dina Fritz years ago, but he withheld this information because he was afraid of the danger it may cause to Historia. So he, in turn, was explaining like, hey, this is what could possibly happen to where you're able to kind of use the rumbling, right? Let's go to the chapter, okay? Let's do. So guys, this is it right here, and this is what it was. So again, I'm putting things in context here because he loves to take shit out of context, right? So we already know what happened. I'm not going to go into no damn recap. I'm going straight down to it here. So right there, boom. Look at all of this, guys. This is what he's saying. This is when they revealed what Zeke's plan was. And this is what he said. They said, I've heard enough. It truly seems he thinks of us as fools. Because he had elaborated his plan. And then this is when Eren stood up and said, no, it's true. I remember now. The one time I was able to activate the powers of the founding Titan was in the moment when I touched a Titan with royal blood. That Titan had the same face as someone in a photo my father left me. I'm certain that was Dina Fritz. By pure coincidence, I came in contact with Dina Fritz that day as she wandered the land as a pure Titan, and that saved my life. Zeke is Dina's son. He must have figured it out too. How to get around the vow of renouncing all war. How to activate the one hope left to us Eldians. The way to use the 1,000 Titans sleeping inside the walls to crush the world to dust. What he's saying is this is what they were afraid of, because that's what they were saying, that he was going to crush all the world, destroy all the world, right? So he was saying that Zeke had figured out that this is the hope. This is the one hope that Eldians have, which is true at this time. This is the only hope, is to destroy the entire world. Remember, they're not referencing a 50-year plan of saying, hey, we're going to do a partial rumbling, right? Nobody would have thought to do a partial rumbling. We got to think about this in reality terms. I'm not thinking of doing no partial rumbling. If we've been persecuted all this time, we have this weapon that's going to basically save our asses. We're going to use it to its full degree, to its full extent. So that's what he's saying. This is the way to use the thousands of Titans sleeping inside the walls to crush the world to dust. This is what Zeke figured out, and this is what they were afraid of. He didn't say, damn, this is what we're going to do, dog. That's not what he's saying. He's explaining and elaborating this. That's why he's like, Eren, like, damn, you kept that from us? Why didn't you keep quiet about that the whole time? Because I was concerned about Historia. That is why. You're taking this video out of you're taking this panel out of context. Once again, you're taking a panel out of context to try to push a narrative that this is all that Eren wanted to do. Eren wasn't willing to listen to no other reason. He just wanted to kill the entire world just because. You gotta stop doing that, man. You gotta stop doing that shit. But yeah, that's what I wanted to do, guys. I wanted to throw this little tidbit in there. So yeah, so you guys should know where I'm coming from. I wanted to do it while I was in the process of making that video, but I didn't want to keep everybody waiting, me scrolling through trying to figure this out. I just recently figured out and found this fucking panel. So that's why I put this in here. But other than that, guys, enjoy the rest of the video. I hope my point came across to you guys. And yes, enjoy.
Posted until Eren himself did so. And because it was so inconceivable, no one, not even those closest to him, wanted to imagine that Eren was ever capable of doing it. Unfortunately, as they would learn, Eren was more than capable. It was what he strived for with an inhuman level of resolve. So while the scouts would begin preparing for their trip to meet the people of the outside world, Eren would begin preparing to wipe out those very same people. To reach his end goal, he'd need to manipulate several key players, starting with Zeke and his most loyal follower, Yelena. He would need to take advantage of their carefully constructed plans for his own purposes. One of the most common criticisms directed at the scouts is that they supposedly did nothing to prevent Marley's attack, and that it was their inaction which forced Eren to unleash the rumbling. That's completely untrue. The scouts did everything they could to reach an alternative solution, even going so far as to sneak into Marley themselves. There's not much else that could have been reasonably asked of them. While they were hesitant to use the 50-year plan because of its obvious flaws, there's no doubt that they would have agreed to it once it was clear that there was no other choice.
Hold on. Pause. This dude is literally, guys, literally, constantly disproving his entire theory. He literally just said verbatim that a lot of people were basically getting upset that they were saying that the scouts didn't do anything in order to like help do this or whatever, help to try to stop it. He just said that is wrong. They did everything as far as they could do, even by going across to Marley to try to find alternative means, right? Is Eren part of the scouts? What was Eren with that group? So if Eren was with that group and Eren is part of the scouts, and you just said that the scouts were doing things to try to find alternative means to do the rumbling, that means that Eren was also trying not to do the rumbling. Huh? As a lot of us already have said. But you said it's in his nature. He's just crazy. He just wants to destroy the world, right? If somebody's just that crazy and just wants to destroy the world, they would not have been over there trying to find alternative means to not do it. You just proved yourself wrong again. Again. So stop it.
One of the biggest reasons this belief gained so much prominence was because of Eren and Hanji's discussion in Chapter 107. The ambiguous translation of Eren's dialogue seems to imply that he was desperately searching for an alternative to the rumbling, yet could not find one due to the scouts' incompetence. However, what Eren was actually saying was that Hanji had no choice but to rely on him and Zeke, as the military would be powerless without them. What was seen by many as...
Bro, this dude is wild, bro. That is not what he was saying, bro. That is not the only thing. He is asking, the main thing for this was he was asking for another way. What he's only doing is he's clarifying what it is. Yeah, you can't kill me. You can't kill me because you need me. But besides all of that, what else do you have? Give me another reason. You can't kill me. That's what he's saying. You can't kill me. But you're talking about, oh, you're trying to flip it now. Oh, well, the reason he's saying that is because he's saying that you can't kill him now.
A cry for help was in reality the complete opposite, and by this point, Eren had already decided that he would destroy the world.
Who am I?
In the dead of the night, 10 months before Eren's attack on Liberio, Yelena reached out to him in secret. This meeting marked the beginning of Eren's collaboration with both Yelena and Zeke, and would inadvertently result in both of them abetting his slaughter. The degree to which Zeke's manipulation influenced the events of the story is frequently overlooked. It would not be wrong to say that his actions were the underlying force that had caused almost every major event in the last few arcs of the series. As we progress through this section, the ramifications of his actions will become evident. Before getting started, keep in mind that almost nothing in this section is directly stated. Most of it is implicit. However, I do believe that this interpretation is correct, and as always, I'll be showing panels supporting my reasoning on screen. Let's begin by answering 2 questions. Why did Yelena reach out to Eren in the first place, and what exactly was Zeke's true plan? Zeke had learned from his predecessor, Tom Saver, how to bypass the vow-renouncing war. Once those conditions had been met, the Founder's powers could make it so that Eldians wouldn't be able to bear children, what Zeke and Xaver had described as euthanasia. But what Zeke had also learned from Xaver was that despite his royal blood, the decision of what to do after he and the Founder made contact would still fall to the Founder, whoever they may be. In other words, the euthanasia plan would fail unless Zeke were to find a cooperative founding titan who shared his philosophy and his goals. Yelena was tasked with finding out if Eren fit that criteria. If Eren did not, Zeke knew that his brother could simply ignore fulfilling his wish, and he would have no reason to continue his cooperation with Paradis. But ensuring that Eren supported the euthanasia plan wasn't the only reason why Yelena reached out to him. Assuming that Eren was the like-minded Founder that Zeke had been looking for, they had much more to discuss if they wanted to make their dream a reality. Despite Zeke now having less than 2 years left in his term, Paradis' military still had yet to commit to his 50-year plan, and their reluctance to do so would create problems for Zeke. Zeke had intended from the start to take over Paradis to ensure that everything went according to his plan.
We know that Zeke has planned on taking over Paradis from the start because the tainted wine arrived alongside the first volunteers. The fact alone can help us deduce most of Zeke's original plan.
He would begin by destabilizing the government after he arrived on the island. He would then use the threat of the tainted wine to take the panicking military under his control. Once in a secure location, and with Paradis under his thumb, he and Eren would be able to carry out euthanasia, followed by a limited version of the 50-year plan. But if the scouts were to find a peaceful alternative to the 50-year plan before he ever arrived on the island, it would be a disaster for Zeke. Paradis would no longer have a need for him, or for his royal blood. As a consequence, his euthanasia plan would become nearly impossible. Although Zeke and Eren would later meet in Marley, carrying out euthanasia there could have ended in catastrophe. Not only was it unclear what would happen after they made contact, but even if they were successful, neither of them would ever be able to set foot on the island again because of their treasonous actions. Even if Zeke might not have cared what happened to himself after his life's work was completed, Eren still had years left in his life, and he would never be able to return home. No matter what, Zeke would never abandon his little brother. Knowing the importance of their proposal being accepted, Zeke and Yelena had grown impatient. But how could they force Paradis' government to accept their plan? Zeke had prepared the tainted wine to ensure that Paradis couldn't go back on the terms of their agreement after they brought him to the island. While it could be used as leverage to keep himself alive if they tried to betray him, it would be ineffective at forcing Paradis to cooperate. The government would likely rather write off their losses than give him control of the island. In short, to use the threat of the wine effectively, the situation on Paradis would need to dictate that compliance with Zeke was safer than resistance. Since that wasn't yet the case, he would need to think of something else. Forcing the military to cooperate with his 50-year plan.
This is a complete waste of time, bro, because you're literally just going through the manga. We already know this was Zeke's plan. We already know that Zeke had a plan basically to do the euthanasia plan because he didn't really tell them what was up. He presented the 50-year plan as a diversion because he really wanted to do the euthanasia plan. That's what he was going to do. And Eren went alongside it, and that's why he recruited all these other people and blah, 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 blah. We get that. We understand that, man. Come on. What are we doing, bro? We totally get it.
Would require making sure that they could never choose an alternative in the first place. He would need to ensure that the island's option of diplomacy was completely off the table. And to do that, he needed to provoke a war between the people of Paradis and the world. But for that, Zeke would need Eren's help.
Excuse me.
He would need Eren to make himself into a hostage in Marley, forcing the island into a situation where they would have no choice but to intervene and start a conflict themselves. The plan that Zeke devised to achieve that goal was as follows. Once Marley's current wars were over, Zeke would use his influence to have Marley stage an international festival in Liberio. Marley would need to use this festival to declare war on Paradis in front of the global community. Eren would defect from the military.
So you telling me that Zeke did this? Zeke may have staged the whole thing. You may have given he probably did. He probably gave them some type of influence to have them to do this. Maybe not. Who knows? I don't even. It may have been told. Y'all tell me if it was told. I don't quite remember that. My brain's a little foggy and fuzzy on that part. But yeah.
And attack this festival on his own, forcing the island to go to war alongside him or else lose the founder. In attacking this gathering of important figures from around the world, Paradis would make enemies of nearly every nation on the planet, and it would only be a matter of time before their armies prepared to retaliate. Paradis would then have no choice but to rely on Zeke and his 50-year plan. Once they returned to Paradis, Zeke's original plan, albeit modified, would come into play. After stalling long enough for the global invasion force to gather, the brothers would take control of the government by rallying those who opposed it, using their support in conjunction with the threat of the wine. Finally, Eren and Zeke would convene. They would carry out euthanasia before unleashing a limited, small-scale rumbling to destroy the global allies and the airship research base in southern Marley. Lastly, they would initiate a modified version of the 50-year plan, involving only the final generation of Eldians. What I've just described is the version of Zeke's plan that we would see him attempt to carry out during the events of the story. And now that we have an understanding of what Zeke intended to do, we can move on to what Eren would do, and how the desires of each brother would clash.
We already know this!
Before being contacted about his plan, Eren may have never even intended to talk to Zeke. If Zeke truly wanted nothing else but to save Paradis, Eren could have simply gone along with the 50-year plan before betraying his brother at the last minute. Yet when he learned of the euthanasia plan from Yelena, Eren was forced to adapt to the situation, and his course of action drastically changed. Paradis' military was suspicious of Zeke's motives from the start, and Eren must have felt the same way. After learning of the euthanasia plan, he likely realized that it was the real reason why Zeke had been so interested in the island. Eren was presented with a choice. He could reject Yelena's proposal and risk Zeke backing out of his cooperation with Paradis, or he could pretend to agree with Zeke's anti-natalist ideology, follow his secret plan, and betray him at the last minute as he had originally intended to do. Having no real choice, Eren went with the latter. We don't know how Eren convinced Yelena, but by the end of this meeting she would confidently believe that he was aligned with Zeke. It was here that Yelena instructed Eren how they would take over Paradis, enact euthanasia, and crush the global allied forces all at once. Through her own selfish desire to have her name etched into the history books, Yelena had initiated the brothers' connection that would inadvertently lead to the advent of the rumbling. Ironically, she would end up being completely forgotten by history as a result of her actions. Yelena had staged her secret meeting with Eren by convincing Flock that there was an urgent crisis she needed to speak with Eren about. Because of that, Flock was present to hear about the euthanasia plan. He listened in as Eren seemingly agreed with Yelena, but afterwards, Eren took Flock aside to speak with him privately. Eren must have been aware that Flock was among those who sought revenge against the outside world. Eren would use that knowledge to his advantage. He asked Flock to work with him and told him his true intent. They would pretend to work with Zeke and Yelena, but they would instead use the rumbling to destroy the world. Flock agreed to cooperate and began gathering allies in preparation for their mission. Flock had likely assumed that both he and Eren felt the same sense of duty towards Eldia. However, Flock was wrong. Restoring the Eldian Empire was none of Eren's concern, and he wanted to destroy the world for a much different reason. So long as Flock and those like him felt that Eren's actions appealed to their newfound nationalism, and Eren's massacre satisfied their desire for revenge, Eren would have his own personal army, one that would die fighting for him. This group, led by Flock, would later come to be known as the Jaegerists. Eren would use the Jaegerists to create the internal chaos that he and Zeke needed to take control of the island. In the end, Flock would end up being no better than the world he loathed, as he himself would become a murder suppressor.
All Flock turned into basically a restorationist. That's what he turned into. He turned into a restorationist to where he took it too far. And yes, I believe Eren did use them, of course, to basically he used them along with the thing to be able to get in contact with him, because in his real plan, Eren's real plan, he wasn't finna go for no euthanasia. Because by the time it got to where he was at in chapter 121 and 122, he'd already exhausted all the options in the sense of not really wanting to do anything. He wasn't finna do that 50-year plan. He wanted a different option. Your interpretation of saying that, oh, you can't kill me because you need me, talking about something, it was a cry out for something else. No, it wasn't. He was literally asking her, what else can we do? What do we got to do? And that's why he was saying, at this point, man, we got to fight. We got to fight. We got to fight. Because at this point now, because that's what she was doing. She was mocking him because he was saying fight. So she was like, at this point now, we got to fight. Because what else do we got? That's how the conversations go, bro. That's not how it is, okay?
Even though Eren now had Zeke, Yelena, and Flock on his side, there was another problem that he needed to take care of: Historia. In the wake of his attack on Marley and his betrayal of Parody, Eren knew that the military would immediately look to replace both he and Zeke with people they could trust. While choosing a loyal inheritor of the founding Titan would take time, any royal-blooded Titan could serve as the catalyst to activate the Founder's abilities. If another besides Zeke existed, his survival could no longer be guaranteed. As Zeke would be bringing Titan injections to the island with him, Eren realized that there would be nothing preventing the military from injecting Historia at their very first opportunity. Eren knew that before anything else, he had to prevent this from happening. Shortly after his meetings with Yelena and Flock, Eren approached Historia in secret. He told her that he'd rejected the 50-year plan, but that he would need her help to prevent its implementation. She would either need to run away or directly fight against the government. The military police would inevitably come to turn her into a Titan, whether she was willing or not.
True.
But Historia refused. She had already accepted that the 50-year plan was the best option for Parody, even if it was to the detriment of herself. Dissatisfied, Eren told her the same thing that he had told Flock. He had rejected the 50-year plan, and he would instead destroy the entire world. Historia was...
Because there was no other option. That's why he did it. Not just because he wanted to. There was no other. Nobody else presented any other viable options for him. So that's why he went ahead and did what he did. Because there's no other options. The way you're acting this video out to be is acting as though that there were just buttloads of options that was more beneficial than what they proposed, and he just said, fuck it, nope. And every single fucking plan that came up to him, they were like doing, like, nope. That's just like you going up to your girlfriend and stuff like that. We all know the stigma. Every time you ask your girlfriend or what do you want to eat, or your wife, they're like, I don't know. You know what I'm saying? They do that. So it's the same thing. You know what I'm saying? Y'all acting like he was like that, to where they were like, hey, we have this plan, Eren. Nope. Well, this plan sounds good. Nope. Well, okay, this is what we can do. We can do this and this, and then this will work. Nope. I'm killing the world. Nope. I'm not listening. Y'all act like that's what he was doing. He didn't do that. There was no other viable option. Because the way the story was written, it wrote him into a corner to where that was the only option. Bad option, terrible option, genocide, it sucks. Yes, we know that. But that was what they gave. That's what they wrote into.
Shocked that Eren would even suggest doing such a thing, and she told him that she wouldn't be able to live with herself if she was complicit in it.
Yeah.
But he reminded Historia of the declaration she had made to him 3 years prior, that she would always live for herself, even if it was at the expense of humanity. Realizing her own hypocrisy, Historia relented. She resolved to accept the rumbling and its cruelty, simply because it was in her own interest. She would do what Eren asked of her, ensuring that the military had no choice but to rely on Zeke's royal blood. Rather than running or fighting as Eren had suggested, however, Historia proposed a third option. She would have a child. Doing so, she reasoned, would put her in a position where the military couldn't risk turning her into a Titan. Childbirth was already risky enough, and the effects of turning a pregnant woman into a Titan were unknown. If she were to die from complications, the military would lose their only royal and their access to the rumbling.
Mm-hmm.
The true genius of Historia's pregnancy was that it would allow her to evade the military without needing to run or fight.
True.
The pregnancy would make her appear to be compliant with the 50-year plan, so long as she lied that the timing of it was a coincidence. The government could suspect that it was an intentional betrayal, but they would never have proof. Historia gambled that the military wouldn't risk her life, and that they would have to wait until after she gave birth to turn her into a Titan. She would turn out to be correct, and this decision bought Eren all the time he would need to carry out his plan after he and Zeke returned from Marley.
Yep.
During Attack on Titan's monthly release, many readers were confused as to the narrative significance of Historia's pregnancy. When it didn't come back to the forefront as the story reached its conclusion, many assumed that whatever plot developments it had been building towards had been dropped. We now know that Historia got pregnant for the sake of Eren's plan, but if there was never going to be a plot twist involving her child, why was it portrayed as if there was? The reason why is simple: there was a plot twist. While most expected this twist to be related to the identity of the child's father, the actual reveal was much more subtle. When we first learned of her pregnancy, we saw that the military police suspected that Historia had gotten pregnant at the suggestion of Elena. As some people correctly speculated, it was actually Eren, not Elena, who had approached her. However, in chapter 130, we were given one final reveal. The pregnancy was neither Elena nor Eren's idea, and she had not been forced to bear an unwanted child. It had been Historia's own decision. This was the secret of the pregnancy. There was nothing else to it. While the reveal might not have met expectations, its narrative impact was immense. In the end, it was Historia's own selfishness that gave Eren the final go-ahead to destroy the world. Having manipulated those necessary on parity, Eren joined the scouts in Marley for their final expedition beyond the walls. The main purpose of their mission was to find a peaceful alternative to the 50-year plan, one that wouldn't require beginning a cold war or sacrificing Historia. As they wanted to monopolize the island's resources for themselves, Hizuru had refused to help Parity befriend other nations, so the scouts had come to Marley to try to do it themselves. Despite Eren's increasingly distant behavior, the scouts hadn't realized how drastically his goals had diverged from theirs. His desire to turn the world into a barren wasteland was so far removed from their desire to make peace that they didn't even consider what he had in mind. Eren had come to Marley with the intention of carrying out he and Zeke's plan, but he didn't defect immediately. His realization that the people living there weren't all monsters had made him reluctant. For that reason, Eren waited to defect until after the scouts had attended the Eldian Rights Group's forum. There it became evident that the situation was even worse than what the scouts had expected. Parity Island was a global scapegoat, and even this group, which advocated for the equality of Eldians, did so at the expense of those on Parity. Before even giving the scouts a chance to respond to what they'd heard, Eren defected. Cutting off his own leg and tearing out his eye, he posed as an injured soldier in the Marleyan army. He had two goals to accomplish in doing so. His first goal was to infiltrate Liberio and meet with Zeke. After tricking him just as he had tricked Elena, they could discuss the finer details of their plan in private.
Yeah, I agree. He
The
definitely
second goal was
He
to weaken
definitely
Marley
did
and
treat-
to bait the militaries of the world into building up their forces near Parity. There they could be destroyed in one fell swoop. Eren had abandoned his friends to accomplish these goals. While they would desperately search for him, he would begin to live with the people of Marley, biding his time until the day of his attack. When the scouts received a letter from Eren stating that he decided to work with Zeke, they had no choice but to cooperate with him. He had successfully blackmailed them. They couldn't risk letting the founder fall into Marley's hands.
He did.
As
I
the
agree with
months
that.
continued to pass with Eren and the scouts making preparations for the day of their attack, Zeke would begin working from the inside to manipulate Marley. Taking advantage of the favor he had within Marley, Zeke pushed for the government to begin a second offensive against Parity. He argued that for their nation's long-term success, they needed the show of military force that conquering the island would provide them. His efforts to convince them of its necessity were successful. Marley began to once again prepare for war, and for a festival in Liberio in which they would declare it.
Okay.
Willie Tiber recognized the threat that Parody may pose now that the founding Titan was no longer bound by the vow renouncing war. And so, after learning of the Marleyan military's plans and that Parody's agents had already infiltrated their country, Willie decided to be the one who would spin the narrative of the war. Like the Eldian rights group, Willie was sympathetic towards the suffering of the Eldians in Liberio. But also like the Eldian rights group, he wished to better their lives at the expense of those on Parody. Willie would use Parody's imminent attack as a method to annihilate their enemies and to atone for the Tiber family's sins. By declaring war in Liberio and allowing himself to be assassinated by Parody in the process, he would make both himself and the Eldians there into tragic victims of the Eldians on Parody. He would direct the world's hatred for Eldians onto them, ensuring that they would be wiped out in the ensuing counteroffensive. Unknown to Willie, all of this had been a setup from the start. Even the very festival itself and his own declaration of war were part of Eren and Zeke's plans to begin a conflict that could be used to force the world into submission.
Yeah, okay, I could agree with that because the way the timing was. So yeah, I definitely agree with that for sure.
The world had lost the battle against the two brothers before it had ever begun. An argument frequently used to justify Eren's attack on the festival is that it was only a response to Willie's declaration of war.
It was.
However, as I've spent so long explaining, it was the complete opposite. The brothers' plan is what caused Willie to declare war in the first place, and his strategy to make himself into a martyr relied on Parody attacking at that very moment.
It was. I agree that the plan was there, and I definitely agree that they did plan for that, for the most part. But I also agree with hoping that things would change, and that it would be different, and that he was hoping that maybe, just maybe, it will be a different outcome. That's what I believe. I believe that it was maybe they were just hoping that it would be a different outcome. But I think for the most part, yeah, he did. He did plan. They did plan for it. They did. You know what I mean? But I also think that he went there to listen to it. But it was only after that. I think the plan was there. But again, I also think that the attack happened because of that. Because I'm quite sure if this motherfucker said something else and said, hey, we're going to go help these guys. Yeah! And everybody was like, oh, great. He wouldn't have attacked. He probably wouldn't have attacked. All right. Pause again. Guys, so far this video has been crazy. Right? Exactly. Okay. We're going to pause on this part because this is something else that I've been wanting to bring up too, but I just never had the time to kind of weave it in. This is something new, y'all. Again, y'all know I don't really do pop-ups like this, but this is something that definitely needs to be said. I'm really tired of people saying what we just heard about, oh, you know, he came over there and he just wanted to do that and bullshit and all that blah, blah, hoopla stuff, right? I'm kind of tired of that. So here's the deal. Guys, I'm going to show you that he did not want to do this. This is my belief based off of my interpretation of what I've read. This is what I believe. I believe when he first went over there, again, I do agree with the whole plan of doing all this and different things like this. I do not, in fact, believe that they knew for a fact that he was going to attack. I don't think they knew that. They didn't know for sure, but what he was doing was when he was in the chariot, the little wagon with Magath, Tiber asked Magath in regards to how basically it would work. And they basically deduced that if an attack were to occur, that would be the best time, would be on his speech while he's on stage. They didn't know for sure that was going to happen. So it wasn't like that was a complete plan and that was going to be the case. They didn't know that for sure. So we can't honestly say that. Like, oh yeah, they knew for a fact that they were there. He was basically advising, like, man, we should have probably paid attention more. Things are a little iffy. We don't know for sure when the attack could happen, but it's a big possibility that it may occur, and this would be the prime time to do it because this is basically what I would do. This is when I would attack, right? So they kind of deduce that, right? But this is what I'm tired of hearing. I'm tired of hearing about that, and here's what I personally and honestly think, as I said before. I think he went over there for sure for everything that led up to it. I totally agree that he went over there, you know what I mean, trying to get understanding from them and all that good stuff. I think all that was the case. But also, I think that it was to hear this speech and to determine and to deduce whether or not the attack or an attack in general would be viable. And maybe something would change, possibly, right? And I'm going to show you why that is. So follow along with me, guys, real quick. All right, so here we are. We're at the speech here. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to zoom in real quick. But we're at the speech here, right? So you see the speech. You see the flashing lights and things like this. And he also made a dumbass and other comment talking about that if he didn't get killed, if Tiber didn't get killed, then his words would have been empty, and then they probably would not have went ahead and went with what they were going with. This is that's total bullshit. Once again, just speaking out your ass. This is people that are clearly invested in what he's saying. This man is literally crying here. We have all of these cameras flashing. We have all of these people. Look how many people that is. Look at this. People are clapping. People are crying. Those words do not seem empty to me whatsoever. I think, honestly, if he would have just ended the speech there and done it, and it is what it was, they still would have went ahead and proceeded as planned. This just gave him dying was just an incentive to push forward and just be like, yeah, that gives us the fuel we need. That's all I think that was. But I don't think in reality, I highly doubt that the words would have fell empty and nobody wouldn't have attacked. I think even after the speech, if he was still alive, they still would have attacked. You know what I'm saying? So let's not do that there, okay? But anyway, this is what I want to show you guys, and this is the interpretation that I have. As you see this too, you see that this man, he's talking. Look at his face, man. Look at this. See, he was talking around, and we already know this stuff. I don't need to go into grave detail. But this man said, look, but I do not wish to die because I was born into this world. His eyes lit up because he used the same mantra that he always talks about, saying that, hey, you have the right to do whatever you want to, and the freedom, you can do whatever you want to. And the reason is because you have that inherent right because you were born into this world. That is why his eyes lit up like that. Like, whoa, he's on kind of like the same stuff as me. He has that same belief, saying that he doesn't wish to die because he was born into this world, so he feels as though he has the right to live. That's what caught his attention. But if we look closely and we scroll down, look at what he's saying. Because of any of you who do not wish to die, lend me your strength. Please, I want to ensure our future together. I want you to fight with me against the devils on Paradise. Look at his face. That is the face of acceptance. That's like, man, if only. You see that little smirk, like, damn. That's what that face looks like. Like, damn, they could have got out of this. Now I have to do what I have to do because there's no other fucking option. And look, and when we go down to the next panel, that is the sigh. That's why that was added. That is clearly, damn. And you know the faces we all make because we all do it. When something happens the way that we knew that it was possibly going to play out, and it actually did, but it still wasn't the outcome we wanted, we're like, damn. That's why he did that. And that's why right after that declaration, he told him to stand up, and he did what he did, and he did the attack. But the reality is I honestly believe he was there to wait for a different outcome. That's my proof right there. Because he sat there the whole time and waited for the end of the speech to be able to wait until, because again, if he really wanted to attack, again, he's fired the first blow. He could have attacked at any time. He could have attacked in the middle of the speech. He could have attacked whenever. But he decided to wait to the end because he wanted to see if maybe this was another alternative. This was another maybe possibility that they probably weren't going to attack and they may be on their side. He already kind of knew they weren't, but this was a possibility. And that is the face of a resound resolution. He was resolved. He found his resolution there. It is what it is. It happened. Damn. That's the face of damn. So, all that bullshit he's talking, man, that garbage he's talking about that his words would have fell short if he didn't die, and the only way they would have attacked is if he did die. That's bullshit. You don't know that. You don't know that whatsoever. But what I do know is based off the panels that I just gave you. The panels that I just gave you provided the evidence that I've been saying all along. This man did not want to do that. He was hoping for a different outcome the whole time. But that is the face of somebody who's found their resolve. It is what it is. Oh well. I guess I gotta do this. That's what it was. So yeah, again, guys, continue this video. Like I said, I know it's wild. Keep going. I digress.
Moment.
But that's a
What if Eren
hypothetical.
had changed his mind at the last minute, hadn't attacked, and the festival had ended without incident? In that scenario, it's possible that Willie's entire plan would have fallen apart. His speech relied on him becoming a victim of the very threat he described. Without this happening, his words would have been empty. With no imminent threat, it's unlikely that the world would have fiercely rallied against Parody in the same way that we watched happen. But it could get even worse for Willie. If Parody had made their peaceful intentions clear to the world after Willie's speech, his entire strategy could have backfired. Marley was deeply unpopular in the global community for their hostility and for their brutality. If it appeared to the world that Willie's speech was nothing more than cheap manipulation to boost Marley's global standing, their response may have been drastically different. Perhaps Parody could have even made a bid to ally with the nations that opposed Marley. Regardless, it's clear that the events of history would have played out very differently if Eren had chosen not to attack.
Y'all, this man just had the audacity to say that if he didn't get attacked, and the people felt as though that his words were empty, and right after the speech, Eldia would have tried to vie for peace, right? That's what he said. They would have tried to vie for peace. He said that they could have possibly gathered some allies. Dog, what is this man smoking, bro? Like, guys, we gotta stop. We gotta get back to reality here, and we gotta look at what the content that was provided to us, the content on the pages, and we gotta deduce and make our reasonings off of that. There is no way. This is what everybody was saying. The way that it was written to the degree that only the rumbling was the only option. There was no other options. What the fuck do you honestly think? Do you honestly think these people who've had such hatred for them all of this time, for hundreds upon thousands of years or whatever, however long it was, do you honestly think that at that point in time, after his speech, if he didn't attack, they would have been like, oh, we'll listen to you guys now. Sure, you guys come on over. Come on, guys. Come on, no problem. You know what? You're right. Marley's ridiculous. We're going to take them out. We'll team up with you guys to take them out. No, the world disliked Eldians. The world, dog. That was world leaders, bro. That was the second time that world leaders clapped and agreed with them. The first time was when all the scouts went over there originally and was trying to see if they were having peace talks there. And they, in turn, turned on them. It was like, no, the people here are good. The Eldians that are here are straight. But them devils, them islands, they got to roll. They got to go. Again, why not have the peace talk there, right? If they were going to have the peace talk, why not speak up there? They didn't. They didn't do shit. They left because it was over with. There was no talking. And you want to say after this speech, all of a sudden they would have just been like, you know what? Sure. Come on, man. Stop with the arming mentality. That's what I call it. The arming mentality. The hope, the wishful thinking. The hope. I hope this can happen. I wish for this to happen. Man, let's get down to what's in front of us, dog. What is happening right now? These people are planning to kill us. What do we have in place to protect ourselves? This plan? I'm not doing it. It's a stupid plan. Next, what else you got? Nothing else? Okay, cool. This is what we doing with. That's how it was, and that's how it should have been. This dude literally said that they could have vied for peace if he would have survived, if Willie. Dude, Jesus Christ. Yeah, it would have. They would have. If he didn't attack, it would have been different.
Following Eren's attack on the festival, there could be no turning back. The war had begun, and its consequences were inevitable. The conflict would continue to escalate, and the events on Parity would play out exactly as the brothers had intended. And just as Eren had planned from the start, he would end up betraying Zeke at the last possible moment to begin the rumbling. All of this would culminate in 80% of the planet being decimated.
Mm-hmm.
Everything I've talked about has been to demonstrate this point. From both an analytical standpoint and an in-universe one, the rumbling could not be defended. According to the perspective we have, it was a terrible strategic decision, and from the perspective of the characters, it was a preventable tragedy. Its use was never about protecting the island, nor was it ever needed for that purpose.
It was.
Each person responsible for the rumbling had pushed onwards for their own goals with no regard for anything else. They had forced everyone into a pointless conflict, and the rumbling was the manifestation of their selfishness. 37 years prior to the rumbling, a child was murdered.
Yeah.
She and her brother had innocently left the walls of their internment zone because they had wanted to see an airship.
Yep.
They knew that they would never be able to ride in it, but they had gone past the walls for a glimpse of freedom.
Yep.
In return, the girl suffered a cruel and pointless death.
Agreed.
Faye Yeager's murder inadvertently set into motion the chain of events that would lead to Marley's destruction. It was her own brother Grisha's quest to avenge her death that led to the birth of both Eren and Zeke, and it was his inability to diverge from his vengeful path that made all of their destruction possible.
Mm-hmm.
And through the annihilation of the country that killed his sister, the revenge that Grisha sought so badly was finally achieved. Or was it? If Faye hadn't been taken away on that day 37 years ago and was still alive today, it would not be Marley that murdered her. Instead, the responsibility for her death would lie with Grisha, as well as everyone else whose actions had led to the rumbling. Faye would be trampled without mercy or discrimination, the same as everyone who lived in the outside world. In the pursuit of revenge,
if Faye wasn't taken away by Marley and wasn't killed by Marley, and they weren't in that particular situation to where they weren't aliens, none of this would have happened. What are you talking about? He just said if Faye hadn't been taken away, she would have got trampled instead. No, she wouldn't have. Why would she have gotten trampled? How would Faye have gotten trampled if she never died? If she never died and everything was all good, that would not have led to him trying to become a restorationist. That would not have led to any of that. He would have just been just fine. So what are we talking about? What's he talking about? I don't get it. What's he talking about?
the same sin that had begun everything had been committed once more. The victims had become perpetrators, and revenge had been achieved through a crime even more cruel and pointless than the one that had inspired it. The tragedy of Faye's murder had never been avenged. It had only been repeated over and over. I've spent a lot of time discussing why those who advocated to unleash the rumbling were indefensible in doing so, and how their actions made them perpetrators. There's no doubt that Eren and his co-conspirators committed an unforgivable crime. But what about those who weren't involved in bringing about the rumbling, yet chose to allow it to continue once it had begun? With the collapse of the three walls, it was clear. Eren was going to destroy the world. The scouts were presented with two options. Allow Eren to continue his slaughter unopposed, guaranteeing Parity's protection from external threats, or kill him, lose the founder in the process, and place the island at the mercy of the outside world's vengeful survivors. The scouts chose the latter, but was that the right choice? Should they have remained bystanders and allowed the destruction to unfold? Those who sided against Eren acknowledged that the destruction of the outside world would be to their benefit, and that stopping his massacre may leave Paradis defenseless in the future. Yet even in spite of that, they chose to prioritize saving billions of innocent strangers' lives over their own security. Were they morally obligated to maximize the number of survivors, even if it could mean their own deaths? We can endlessly debate that question, but the answer doesn't really matter. Making the most logical decision based on numbers alone is not why the scouts chose to fight. Understanding why they chose to stop Eren requires an understanding of what they had fought for from the beginning. From the moment of the organization's inception, the Scouts were a group of self-destructive, selfless people whose very existence had gone against common sense. Each of them had chosen to forsake the option of remaining a bystander the moment that they had dedicated their heart for humanity. They had fought against their own self-interest, and had given their lives only so that one day humanity may reach a better future, one that they themselves likely wouldn't live to see. Could this same group of people who'd gone against the flow their entire lives, who'd given up everything with no regard to divisions or discrimination, ever turn their backs on humanity's suffering for no reason other than their own survival? No, they could not even for a group of people who despised their existence. It was through this final, purely selfless act that they were able to work towards mutual forgiveness with their former enemies. Establishing a lasting peace, they were able to put an end to the cycle of hatred that had lasted for 2,000 years. It was through this choice that the thousands of beating hearts that had been sacrificed finally reached the freedom they had sought after, a world without walls. This is by far the most difficult video I've made yet, surpassing the Eren one. While it's true that in the story's epilogue we see civilization on Paradis get destroyed, the cause of this event was left deliberately ambiguous. Despite that, a lot of people still use Paradis' destruction to justify the rumbling, saying that it wouldn't have happened if the Alliance hadn't stopped Eren. Putting aside the fact that it would make no sense for the author to undermine the message of his own story, there's no evidence whatsoever that this attack was even related to the conflict between Marley and Eldia. In fact, based on the Alliance's final scene, it seems more likely that they managed to end the cycle of hatred between the two altogether. I'll probably make a video about this at some point too. Thanks for watching, and make sure to like and subscribe if you haven't.
Guys, that was a lot of hoopla to me. I'm just gonna be perfectly honest with you guys. That did absolutely nothing. That again, production quality was great. Production quality was on point. Production quality was outstanding and awesome. Not saying nothing against that. Not saying anything against that. That the production quality on that was very, very, very well done. It's very, very awesome. Again, production quality aside, because the production value of it is very well done. It's extremely well done as always. Hats off to you guys. Hats off to the crew. Excuse me. Hats off to everybody who helped with that in regards to delivering. Very well done. I enjoyed it in that sense. But once again, guys, we're left with bullshit. We're left with bullshit. Because the reality is this. The reality is you're explaining and saying that the rumbling is indefensible. We know that. I think everybody, and that's the point that everybody's trying. You're trying to, you touched on points that was totally irrelevant. You touched on all points that was damn near irrelevant. Because the reality is we know that the rumbling is bad. We know that what he did was terrible. We know that. We know we're not saying like, hell yeah, great, wipe them motherfuckers out. Nobody's not saying that. Because we can empathize with the fact of like, damn, I can empathize with what he is feeling. Because again, he didn't want to do that. He didn't just want to just kill random motherfuckers. Like, that's not what he wanted to do. This is why he begged and pleaded for them to try to find another way. He did alternative things to try to find another way of doing it. He did not want to do it. It wasn't like he just, like I said, you're painting the picture as if they came to him with seven different options, and he just said, nope, not listening, nope, and ran off every time they were trying to talk to him. Hey, Eren, we got a plan. We got something we want to talk to you about. Nope. He just ripped it up and ran off. I don't want to hear it lie. You act like that's what the fuck he did. And that's not what he did at all. You know what I'm saying? There was different things that was transpiring to where it clearly showed that that's not what he wanted to do. But you're trying to act as though that he just was I don't give a fuck. I need to kill all these folks. These folks are in my way. I don't give a shit about these people. They're all dead. Fuck them. Like, that's the mentality that you're acting as though that's what he had. Again, to try to push the narrative that, oh, yeah, that's it. That's what he did. That's what it was, right? No, that's not what it was. That's not what he did. And you act like there was just multiple things. The way the story was written, guys, source material, the way the story was presented to us was if that was his only option. Kill or be killed. Again, was the 50-year plan a better option in terms of moral stance? Sure. To a degree, yeah. To a degree, in terms of like the overall scale of it, as I said before, to reiterate, yeah, the 50-year plan, in an overall sense, more people would have survived over you wiping out the entire world. So yeah, I can kind of get that. But that's why the writer Isayama put fail-safes in the story to show you that there was no other option that Eren, based off of his ideals and his ideology of freedom and all of that, was going to accept. He wasn't going to accept his friend Historia being a baby factor. That's why he went along with her plan to have a kid. To deter the military, as you said, your little determinant theology. We all know what that is. But he went along with her having a baby because it would deter the military and give him time enough to do what he needed to do. That's why she couldn't accept it, though. She didn't accept his plan, but he told her what he was going to do. Because the reason he was going to tell her what he was going to do is because of the simple fact that at that point in time, there was no other option. He was willing to sit down and listen. He was willing to meet with Zeke and do all of these different things. He was willing to do all of that. It wasn't like he just said, no, just lock me up in my cage and set me onward, and I don't give a fuck. No, he was willing to meet to see what the hell was going on and what was happening. This is why that was the case. It had absolutely nothing else to do with all that other bullshit. He did that on purpose. He met with them folks on purpose because he still wanted to try to find alternative means, because Historia being a baby factory, and as you so amply put out, which was quite right, it went against the free will of the kids. They didn't have a chance to live their own lives. They were basically fated at that point to become cannibals and to constantly pass that shit down all the time, and that cycle continued, and Eren wasn't having that. That was it. What other option? You want to talk about it? Willie Tybur declared war, and we went to the meeting of all the heads of states and different nations there, and they basically wanted us dead. What else you got? That's it. Those are the only two options. Because again, in the way I'm thinking he about to present us with another option that was just this grandiose option that we didn't see. All you did was just read to us the manga. We already knew all of these facts. We already knew everything. We already knew all the intricacies and all that different stuff. We knew that. So by us knowing those things, that we knew that. So that's my thing. We knew all of that. So this honestly, you talk about the rumbling was pointless. This video was pointless in a sense of trying to give ideas across, because you really didn't do anything or explain anything that we didn't already know. And a lot of those points you tried to touch on from your last video added to that. We just refute that, disagree with that. But this was a pointless video to make. Everybody knows that genocide is fucking wrong. We know that. What are you talking about? But by us even knowing that, we can still see why he went to that extreme. Was it an extreme? Absolutely. But we can see why. Because the answers were laid out to us. Again, I don't know, guys. Like I said, I'm just as thrown aback as you guys. But again, I feel as though that shit. I feel as though, as I said, man, it was pointless to even have that conversation. It was very pointless to even have that conversation. Because the way I see it, man, we already knew why he did what he did. We already knew all of this stuff. We already knew that. Like, we already knew that shit. There was no reason for you to even... There was no reason for it. We already knew it. We already knew it, man. We already knew that, dog. Again, as I said before, I just think that the video was pointless in terms of trying to deliver something that we all know. We already knew that it's indefensible in terms of, like, if somebody's trying to defend it to a degree. I can see why you're saying that it's bad. It's not indefensible in the sense of us understanding why he did what he did. We can see why. Again, it would only be indefensible. It's only indefensible if he had this power and nothing, and he just killed everybody and was like, okay, I'm just killing everybody just because. Just because. I don't even care. I don't even know. Everybody just has to die. I don't care what's going on. Everybody has to die. That would be an indefensible reason. Prime example, and I'll leave y'all with this. Just like with Thanos. In terms of not how it was depicted in the Infinity Gauntlet comic, but how it was depicted in the movie. His reasoning for wiping out half of humanity, just wiping out half of humanity, is wrong. We see, like, God damn, that's terrible. But in terms of his reasoning as to why he's going to do it, we can understand, like, oh, shit, you're wiping out half of humanity because resources and everything are finite, and eventually resources are going to run out, which is going to cause chaos and cause war and do all that. I'm trying to get ahead of the curve by, yes, doing something terrible, but again, I'm going to wipe out half of humanity, but the way I'm going to do it is fair and at random, to where, at random where people die. It's nothing more, but it will, in the long term of things, the many have to die to save the other half, right? So we can see and empathize with that. Is it wrong? Yeah. It's bad? Yeah. But we can see, like, oh, okay, I see why you're doing that. I see why it's doing that. Because it does make sense. Even though it's terrible to do, it does make sense. Because in the long run of things, in order to maintain a society and humanity, it makes sense that things are going to run out. And then this is to avoid war and stuff like that. You can see points and reasonings as to why. You're just not, especially that's where understanding comes from. It's not just eventually he's like, oh, I'm just going to wipe out half of the universe. Why? I don't know. Because I want to. That's what means that it would be indefensible. It would be stupid. Because you have no reason why you're doing it. You're just doing it. But it's not indefensible in the sense of us knowing the reasons as to why he's doing what he's doing. We know why Eren did the rumbling. It wasn't just because he wanted to. See, it's indefensible to you because you want to create a world in which the ending makes sense. That's why it's indefensible to you. Because it's only going to be indefensible to you if you go down the theories and bullshit that you are saying. By saying that all he wanted to do was kill people just because. So yeah, if he only wanted to kill people just because, like you're saying, yes, it's truly indefensible. You can't defend it. It's just ridiculous because he just wanted to kill people just because. But it is defensible in the sense of the reasonings as to why he's doing it. Is it bad? Yes, it's terrible. But we can see why he did what he did based off the reasonings that were given. Simple as that. All right, guys. Look, I did this is a whole video. This is super fucking long. Again, Talladega, this one's for you. I hope you guys watch it in full. Even if you got to watch it in pieces, you can come back to it. But yeah, this is definitely in-depth, long video. As I said, I talk. Y'all know how I get my points across. You can look back at my old videos. You know that. But guys, this was a fun one to do. This was a good one to do. Again, guys, like, comment, subscribe, and most importantly, share. And as always, guys, I appreciate it, and I'll see you guys in the next one. I'm out.